Hello, everybody. Welcome to Studio C in beautiful West Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. This is sort of a part B video working with shooting in GameMaker. This one is designed specifically to go in a little bit more detail than the first video as to how my starting file was set up. I'll talk a little bit about that title page and things like that in a little bit more detail. So this is kind of optional for those that are interested in doing it. So I will run the game as it was at the beginning of the shooting video. And what you will see right away is that there is a title page that pops up. And it says press anywhere to begin. So there's actually a couple subtle new things on here that I haven't shown you in previous videos that'll take a little bit of time. One is the ability to draw this text, and it uses something called the draw event. And the draw event is a special kind of event that all sprites or all objects have, but essentially you're going to override the built-in draw event by saying I'm going to make a draw event on my own. Now that causes problems potentially if you don't understand what's going on, because if you are using a standard object with a regular sprite, it gets drawn in its default draw event. If you add a draw event to that object, then you are actually going to override the existing one, and suddenly it doesn't draw your sprite. So there are some issues you need to worry about when you're working with drawing. So what I normally do is, if I want to draw things like text on the screen like this is, or maybe some lives that are being demonstrated, or maybe some kind of heads-up display, then I always do it in a completely separate object, even though maybe some of the things might seem like they belong in other objects. So I'll show you what that looks like. Second thing is, and I did show you this once before, we're going to click anywhere on the screen. So it doesn't matter where I click for that to work. I'm also going to talk a little bit more detail about how I've got my accelerated player to work, and I also, just very quickly, in case we didn't go over it in enough detail, I'll talk about how my space invaders are actually coming towards the ground, and perhaps we can even talk about their direction a little bit too. All right, let's get started. All right, so let's talk about this title room first of all. So you may have noticed, I'm sure you did because we haven't done this in the previous videos, that this room, as well as the second room, which is level 1, has the same space background. So let's talk about that first of all. So first of all, if you're going to add any picture to GameMaker, it has to come in as a sprite. So in the sprite, I've created a simple sprite for background, just did your standard setup, and went and found an image that I had previously saved. Okay, so the image size doesn't matter when it comes to a background to start with, because we're going to use the background kind of built-in options to resize this background to fit our screen. The one thing that might not be obvious if you haven't worked with multiple rooms yet is that when you create a second room, by default it will become the same size as your first room, and that's normally what you want, right? You don't want your window to be expanding and contracting on people. Now, if your windows aren't the same size, then quite often it'll show I think it'll show a black screen or something like that. I'm actually not sure the answer to how GameMaker, this version of GameMaker, does handle that. So what I did is I created a room, title room, made it the size I wanted, and then I went into the background tab. And over here, the first thing is you just choose your sprite, whatever sprite it does. Now I'm going to turn this little thing off, and what you'll see is the way it came in. So it turns out that the sprite that I picked was a massive picture that I had used as a background of my desktop. In fact, some of you probably noticed that in the video transitions, perhaps. So by default, it comes in as the size of the sprite. So if it's only this big, then it's only going to be this big. If it's this, it's massively big like mine is, it's massively big. So these first three options explain how your sprite will adjust to the size of the room. So in my case, what I want to do is I want to do stretch. Now what stretch does in this case, it takes the big image and it stretches it down so it fits it nicely. Now if my proportions are way off, this might not look really good because it might skew or do something as it fits it in, because it's going to stretch it this way and it's going to stretch it this way. Fortunately for me, it worked pretty well. Otherwise, if it's too small, you usually don't want to hit stretch because it pixelates your whole picture, so you may find you need to do tile of different kinds, and if that doesn't look good, then you're stuck creating an image that's a little bit bigger. The other thing I thought I'd show you while I'm here is horizontal and vertical speed. Now that doesn't really make sense for this particular image, but I'll show you what happens if I give it a horizontal speed. I'm going to pick the number -3. You'll see why I say negative here when I run it in just a second. So if I hit play, what it's actually going to do is going to give that image a speed. Now, It's going to do something weird right off the bat, and that is it's going to smear the bottom of the screen. So what actually happens is it draws it here, 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 and then it doesn't keep redrawing. So this might be a situation that would look a little bit better if I had a horizontal tile, meaning it's going to keep doing, I think. Let's see if that works the way I anticipate it working. So it's going to keep kind of repeating it, tiling it over to the right whenever it needs it. So basically it fills it up horizontally with as many copies of the picture as we need. So let's see if that does what we want to do. So now you can see what happens, right? So it's got this visual. Now, where that would be good is if you had a little, shooter that was facing that direction, right? Then it looks like he's flying through space. Now, clearly, this image isn't the best one because it doesn't line up nicely. And then, of course, we have the Earth coming multiple times. But I guess maybe we're just orbiting the Earth really, really quickly. But that's why you might use a horizontal speed. Doesn't really apply. Negative means this direction because the default direction and speed, horizontal speed is to your right. All right. Now, next thing I did with this is I created a new object, and I'll go and look at it, that I've called the OBJ title object. If you double click this object, you will see that there is no sprite. Now, when you drag something with no sprite into the room, it comes in as a little gray circle and question mark. It's kind of probably hard to see for you to see on this video. So that's what it looks like. I always have a tendency to put these objects sort of in the top right corner. See if it's good. Let me move it on. Maybe it's not for a minute. I have to go to main instances later. That's why. And I should be able to click that and drag it up. So I just kind of have a kind of a standard practice of putting it either in the top right corner, or if you've got other window options like this in your way, you might want to choose to put it in the just top left corner, but make it like off your main room so you can see that it's not part of this, that doesn't blend in. It's really easy to see. So I can see that I've got this object in. Common mistake to do is to make these things, but then forget to actually put it somewhere in the room. So if you always look in the same consistent location, that'll help. So now here's all this has. Really simple little action. Well, here's this global left press. Let's take care of that first. So if you remember, when you, I'll go to change event just so you can see what this is gonna do. You're gonna go to mouse, and the things that most people pick is just the left press button. But left press means you have to click on this particular object, and of course we don't want to have to click anywhere in this object. So I went down to global, and I chose global left press. So now I can click anywhere. And what did I do? Is I just found the next room action, and I go to my next room. So that's what takes care of the click. So here's the draw. Add event. I'm just going to do it here. I won't actually click on draw. Now there's a bunch of different draw things. I'm going to recommend when you are just learning, you don't do any of that other than just the basic draw. But you see there's a few other things you can work with. There's even a window resize. So that was what do you want to do if the window gets resized. You want to kind of redraw things. But I'm just going to suggest you use the draw event when you're first learning. And again, the draw event means override whatever existing draw event there is. This doesn't have a sprite that's being drawn to the screen, so I don't have to worry about messing up anything up that was pre-built in. And so in this draw event, what it says is essentially draw values. So the draw value says there's basically this word caption and the word value. I'm not sure why they split it into two different things, but well, the reason is that way you could have like a variable. So this draw could be, say, you could write the words player one score, and then you could access a score variable in this one, right? So it draws a caption and the words. If you just want words, I just leave the caption blank. You do need to have quote. You'll see that actually pops in when you first do it, and then the value. So I call it Coop Invaders, and then I set my location. I repeat it down here, there. Now, the one thing you don't see above this at the top, there it is draw color. So you have to set draw color before you draw your text, before you draw your value. And so that one's really obvious. Just go and pick a color, what to do. But the second thing is you need to set a font. So you notice this says big font. Well, so set font is an action you search for, but there is no kind of way I create that here. So that is set over here on the right, like you create a new object or you create a new font. So just by demonstration, if I say right click create font, you will see the standard window that has all of the extra fonts, the regular standard fonts you're going to do. It does do a preview there, and you just set your size or whatever you want. So it doesn't set color, but it sets all of the other options you want. So I create those over here first. Let me just delete that one, and then I use the delete font action. There it is. Sorry, the set font action that draws this, and then because I had two different sizes, I do that and then that. So that's how I draw things again. Again, don't forget to pull these objects into your room. If I was to do this, say in a shooter, it would delete. It wouldn't show the shooter sprite object. So you don't want to use these draw events probably in most cases with sprites that have, or with objects that have sprites. You only want to use it with objects that don't have sprites. So you kind of keep separate. You could have many different ones on the window doing different things anytime you want. Okay. All right, let's see how we're doing for that. So that was kind of the title page. That takes care of everything on the title page. All right, let's have a quick look at my second room. I'll pull it up just so we have that reference. So if you haven't noticed, the one thing I want to point out to with the player is that it's controlled by arrow keys. Of course, you can't see me type that, but I'm telling you it is. And you'll see that in a second. But what I've done is I have simply had a left pressed, which sets the horizontal speed of my guy. Now you'll see what I've done is I've set a relative horizontal speed. I'll show you that in a second. So it means increase its speed this way or increase its speed this way. Now what you don't see is I also have an outside room which just says set speed to 0, horizontal speed to 0. So he hasn't gone too far off the screen, but the more times I'm hitting right arrow multiple times, now if I hit left arrow and right arrow, they start to accelerate, but that'll give me the ability, if I do it carefully enough, to hit stop. Okay, let's show you how that works. OBJ ship, left arrow. So all I did with this is a really simple action. Actually, it's set speed, but I went into this drop-down menu. Normally, up until now, we've just been saying direction. This time I said, nope, I specifically want horizontal speed, and I said make it -2 relative. Now, this arrow helps you figure out what's a positive horizontal speed and what's a negative horizontal speed. Same thing goes with the vertical, as you'll see the arrows, so what's a positive vertical speed and what's a negative vertical. So I'm in my left pressed, so I want a negative speed, and again, relative means change this value by this much. So if I turn this off, it'll just set it to -2 no matter what, so it can't accelerate. By making it relative, it says change it by -2, if that makes sense. The right press is the same, +2, relative, and then of course outside room you can see just says, I just set it to direction to 0. I could have also said horizontal speed to 0, would have worked exactly the same. Okay? All right, the last thing I want to show you in this short little video is the OBJ fish, and really all I've done for that is I've got the OBJ fish working in a particular direction, and then I've used my outside room event. Those are under add event other, outside room, and it simply says jump. So what I did with this one is I said jump to a point, leave X blank, so I don't change X at all, and then I've said 64 relative for Y. So again, take its current Y value, jump it by 64 relative. So don't change its X coordinate, just change its Y coordinate. And then you haven't seen this one before, there is a reverse direction that gives the option of reversing direction, reversing horizontal speed, vertical speed, or gravity, which can be kind of handy if you're doing some fun little gravity games. Okay, jumping. Okay. All right, there you go. That's the end of our Part B video to kind of walk you through the details of how this was created. Hopefully you also have watched the Part A already to learn how the rest of the shooting works. Great. Thanks, everybody. Goodbye.